All right, sorry about that, guys. I had to stop the video for a second. So the group, you want to put the group purpose, the goals. You want to put down what the eligibility, recruitment, and the screening would be in order for people to get into the support group. Unlike maybe like AA meetings and stuff like that, these are the type of groups where you want to do assessments and pre-interviews and screenings, because you want to make sure that the people that are in the group are going to cohesively work together in order to support one another, because that's the whole purpose of a support group, to make people feel like they're not the only ones in their situation. So what I had said is basically that the recruitment would be either from counselors that recommended individuals into this support group, given the criteria of being a African American mother of a son, that their son was still a child, that, you want to make sure that these people are going to fit together. There's no perfect group, but you can try as hard as you can to match each individual with the right support group. It's critical for the success of the overall group and for the individuals attending the group. So I have put down there that I would partner with the YMCA, the YWCA. You can post stuff with the library or post office or local clinics, hospitals, or churches. These are kind of pivotal areas where most people are going to go with their children or seek some type of assistance. So you want to make sure the group cohesiveness is the relationship between the group members, and it's reliant upon the individual relationship between the client and the therapist, because it's really essential that you still have that therapeutic alliance with each group member, which is extremely hard in some cases. But if you're an active listener and you allow the group to lead themselves as opposed to dictating and leading the group as a therapist, and I know that's the hardest thing to understand, like, but I'm a therapist, I'm supposed to lead it. No, the group will authentically move itself where it needs to go, and then you can be the person that redirects the group when necessary. So the group logistics you have to come up with, like how long the group is going to be, how, many weeks it's going to be. You have to really figure out how you're going to structure the group. Is it going to be a short-term group? Is it going to be a long-term group? Short-term groups last about 10 weeks. Long-term groups can last about 6 months to a year. So you really want to make sure that when you're designing a group for therapy, a support group, that you really understand what the logistics are and what your leadership style is going to be. So for the group that I was initially gonna do, is I wanted to make sure that I was doing a structural family therapy style. And so what that is it actually takes a look at the way people are parenting, and it doesn't necessarily criticize, but it impacts and critiques and adds and implements change into the way that they're parenting. Because it's not as though these mothers are doing something so wrong, but sometimes you really just need an outside source. And historically, you might have been raised a certain way, but you're realizing with your child that's just not working, and you really don't know who to turn to because your family members are used to, one way of raising a child. So that's really important. Let's see here. You want to figure out what the roles of the members are. So in order for the group to be harmonized and together, there's going to be certain people that are going to be the talkers of the groups. There's going to be the listeners of the groups. There's going to be people that are going to be distant. There are going to be people that are going to want to support other people in order to deflect from themselves, like the praisers, like, oh my God, you're so amazing. You're so strong for that. You really have to look at those individuals because they're not really getting the full value out of the support group. They're more focused on being like a sideline therapist, and that's not what they're there for. So as a facilitator or a co-facilitator, you have to pay attention to these aspects. Also, you want to, look at what your procedures are. So some of the procedures would be to check in with your group. You want to make sure that when you're doing check-ins, a simple check-in can be like a roundabout. So what that is like everybody in the group will go around and say one word that would express how they're currently feeling, maybe in the beginning of the session, maybe after some heavy processing has happened during the group. If somebody's brought up a difficult topic, and you guys all process it as a group, that might be a really great time after that to check in with each individual person within the group. And everybody has to participate to kind of get a feel of how people are feeling. If you notice that somebody is just really sitting back and not interacting, it's okay to check in with them before the end of a session just to make sure that they are present and that they're not silently going through something that you haven't brought to the forefront for the group to assist and help them. So really verbalizing is important in these group situations, but you want to pay attention to body language of each member as well. So that's why it's great to have a co-facilitator, because while you're listening to maybe one group member speak, you can have the co-facilitator kind of just like, scan the circle and kind of see how people's body languages are. If somebody's upset, you want to be able to have another set of eyes. It doesn't always happen, but when you do have a co-facilitator, please take advantage of that situation in order to make sure that you're checking in. Also, you want to consider the ethical and legal considerations when it comes to support groups, because as a member of the ACA, the American Counseling Association, you have to take reasonable precautions in order to protect the clients in the setting, both physically, emotionally, and psychologically from trauma. So what that means is that although you as a licensed therapist are obligated to keep their information private and confidential, there's nothing that is going to force the clients within the support group to do that. So the best way that you can try and do that is really try and get people to essentially become involved with one another. Like a lot of times in support groups, you might have them break off into dyad groups. So what that is just like paired off as, okay, it's a buddy system. Like we're going to support one another through this process. And what that does is it holds people accountable and it makes people feel closer to one another, that you're less likely to have a group member go and speak about another member's experience. Now, that's not going to stop somebody from talking about, hey, this is what happened in group, but giving names, demographics, pictures, there shouldn't be any of specific group members or specific scenarios. It should reduce it. I can't guarantee it, eliminate it. There will be no single therapist that can ever say that they can eliminate a group member from breaking confidentiality. But the best thing to do is just make sure that, like I said earlier in this video, that group rules are established and that they're adhered to. And group rules are established in the beginning by the group members. You as the leader, you do not set the group rules. You can help with establishing them, but the group rules are really there for the clients to do because it allows them to feel like they're taking ownership over their experience. And it actually helps them hold others accountable. Like, hey, you broke one of our group rules. We all agreed to this. Like, what's up with that? It's okay to check each other, obviously in a nice way, in a supportive way, but in order for a group to be successful, there's going to have to be those checks and balances. Obviously, the cultural consideration has to be involved. There might be some individuals, although this is for an African American single mother group, there are multiple different micro cultures within one culture. So you can have an African American woman that's a second or first generation woman from Africa, or you can have a woman that is grew up in a well-established home life, but now she's a single mother and she's been exercised out of her family. Or you could have somebody that has grown up with less than any money in the lowest income bracket, and so those are all a part of cultural considerations. Just because from the outside people appear to be the same, that doesn't mean that they are. So it's really important that you consider each individual's cultural consideration, even if they identify within the same race. Um, so when you're creating your session, you want to name your session. Like my session number 1, I named Let's Get Acquainted. So the objective of that was the introduction of the group members, defining the purpose of the group, and establishing a positive group environment through group rules. You have to put down like what materials are needed. So I had put down, name tags, notebook, pen, paper, M&Ms, because that was part of the one of the icebreakers I did. A mindful handout. When you do support groups, although most of us don't like paper pushing, having some type of supporting documentation or handout or something that the person can take home with them to read and reflect on is really important. You want to have an agenda. So I did a detailed session instruction. So basically, for anybody here that has switched careers from being a teacher, you'll probably be super familiar with this. Like if you had a substitute teacher and you had to leave like substitute instructions, you kind of want to break the entire session down as to this is what I want you to do first, second, third, fourth, fifth, last. So like I broke it down into minutes. Like for 5 minutes, we're going to do an introduction, go around the group, give each other's names, and tell us a little bit about yourself. For the next 10 minutes, then you're going to do the purpose of the group. Group members will share their fears, apprehensions, and questions regarding the support group along with ground rules. Then the next 15 minutes was the icebreakers using M&Ms. So the icebreaker for this session I did was each color of the M&M would represent an open-ended question. Each member will be asked on how many M&Ms they have in a small bag, and each M&M provided to them, each color would equal a question, and they would have to pick an M&M out, and whatever color it is would align with the question, and they would answer it. And it would center around being a single mother or just, raising a son. So then that way the icebreaker, it still plays into the purpose of the group. So that's really important. When you're doing an icebreaker, don't just pick any old thing. Make sure that it really plays into what the support group is. Since I decided to do structural family therapy for the next 10 to 15 minutes after the icebreaker was processed, then it broke into what is structural family therapy, because you want to let people know when they're in these support groups what type of therapy they're going to be receiving, and make sure you explain it to them so that way they're aware of the process, and that way they don't feel like they're walking through this whole thing blind. So a lot of times you want to reflect on the different type of therapy. You want to be able to check in at the end of therapy, and then you want to summarize, like, what were some of the standout points, summarize what were the themes of the therapy session, and then also fill out how the group members are feeling. I know when I was in residency, they had like a book, and it was 1 through 365 to represent each day of the year, and you would pick whatever number you wanted. Sometimes the number meant something to you, sometimes it didn't, and from that number the therapist would go to that page and read an inspirational quote. So that's just a good way to kind of end on a positive note for a therapy session. And so that kind of gives you an idea of how to create a session and what that looks like. So I felt like being able to really look at what a group was contextually and then implement it into a real life experience when I went into my residency was so important. That it's just something that if you get a chance to do it, if you're in this program that I'm in or any other program that if your online offers residency, first of all, you have to do it. It's not like an option, but it really does help you get the skill sets that you need. And, although I still have my field work to do because that's coming up in spring, it allows you to feel a little bit more confident in your abilities, because residency 1, I was a nervous wreck. I didn't know how to do anything. This is a career switch. I was like, I've never been a therapist. I've never been in therapy. Well, I've been in therapy. I haven't technically been a therapist, but I have done therapy sessions. And so my confidence level going into residency too was a lot higher, and I feel a lot stronger in my capabilities when I do enter into my field work. So my field work, hopefully will be in spring. I'm trying to find a couple placements. If I don't find placements, my school does have something called telebehavioral. So what that does is it allows you to get your field work hours, which are only 100 hours. This is not your internship, but will allow you to get your 100 hours, and it would be like virtual counseling. So you would do your counseling sessions online. Like when I was in therapy, I did sessions online, and I felt like I didn't lose any value. Some of them were like you could do video or just like chat back and forth. I just did chat back and forth. It's really up to your comfort level, but that is something that's really growing in this field, and it's really helpful for people. Like say you get to a point where you have your license and everything and you have a growing family and you really just don't want to go to an office and you want to work from home, you create your own schedule. Being a therapist is probably your next best option. Like it kind of gives you the best of both worlds. So that is a class, the telebehavioral class, that I'll be taking in fall, fall 2, because I'm doubling up, which I'm kind of like, oh my gosh, like even taking one class like is exhausting. And I know people are like, one class, no. They slam 14 weeks worth of work into 7 weeks. So it's not like, oh, I take one class, it's so easy and fluff. No, I mean, like you have back to back to back to back to back assignments, even coming back from residency. Like I had stuff due like 2 days before I flew out. I had stuff due a day after I flew back. Like no joke. This program is extremely intensive, and if you're not in a program that's intensive, like you have to question, what are you learning and how will this really help your clients in the future? So that was kind of my update. Please like, subscribe, share the video. Let me know if you have any questions. I hope for anybody that has asked questions and I haven't answered, that maybe this video kind of answered and gave you guys an update. So until the next time, when I have free time, I will make another video. So bye, y'all.